Okay, hello everyone. This is Mad. I'll be doing an 8.3 BFA Destro Warlock guide here today for you. I'll be going over anything for Raid, Mythic Plus, PvP. I'll be going over Azurite, essences, talents, trinkets, generic gearing for some scenarios, corruptions, um, and some overall gameplay things. Just a few things to think about. Some good tips that I've learned along the way while playing Warlock for the past few years, and anything I can teach you. So we'll start with some talents here. I'm just going to go over the important ones. So the 45 row, Burning Crush is your standard for almost every single situation. If you don't need a lot of mobility, or you can get away with your Gateway and just Demonic Circle, you can run Dark Pact to help you live a little bit longer. It's very nice. For PvP, I'd run Demon Skin. It's super overpowered. Mandatory that you run this because your Soul Leech is your best healing in PvP. So make sure you run Demon Skin. The next row is the 75 row. Obviously, like I said, Demonic Circle, really nice for if you have any set position that you want to return to. And also remember that it removes all slows. For example, for fights like Rathion, remove the slow. Really, really, really nice. I'll remember that it does both things. Mortal Coil obviously is really nice and mandatory for PvP. But for Mythic Plus and even some rating encounters, it is very, very nice because it's about as much healing as a Healthstone. We look here, Healthstone is 25%, Mortal Coil is 20%, so it's 5% less, but it's really, really potent as a heal. And there also are some situations where having the Incapacitate is really, really nice. Dark Fury is nice, mostly in Mythic Plus, but now in those scenarios, you usually have other people doing a lot of stuns, so then you're just basically DRing all the time, and it's not really worth. So I would say Mortal Coil does win out most of the time. For the 90 row, you'd think, why would I bring this up? Because Grimoire Supremacy is super overpowered. Yes, it's mandatory in PvE, and Mythic Plus. Like, it's just rating Mythic Plus, you should use Supremacy. Don't think about anything else. However, for PvP, this is only 4%, and you're not always guaranteed to get massive bolts inside your Infernal. And a lot of the time you actually want to split your CDs up to get 2 points of pressure, because Dark Soul alone can cause pressure, and Infernal alone can cause pressure. Them together can be lethal, but them apart can also be lethal. So there are scenarios where you're only using this alone, and actually Roaring Blaze would be better in some scenarios. Scenarios where you're facing warriors, demon hunters, and mostly melee that have a lot of control, and you're never going to really get any good bolts off during your Infernal. Roaring Blaze is going to be more consistent damage and is very strong. So keeping on the topic of PvP, your honor talents. This is a pretty standard setup with Conflict Major to give you demon armor. Um, this is what you run with demon armor against like a RMP, where they have physical damage with the rogue and magic damage with the mage. So you run reflect for any like G-Pies, polys, or anything that you want to reflect. Obviously, demon armor to help you live against the rogue and give you more health, which is very nice. I always run root. I think root is like pretty much the best. But if you're running like a frost mage, you definitely root can obviously hurt the frost mage. So running fell fissure can be good, or even cremation can be really good because cremation just does a lot of damage. Um, if you're facing just pure caster cleaves, you can also run any of these and change your major from conflict to obviously visions, lucid, reaping flame is probably the one I would suggest. Any of those are always very, very strong. Um, anything, and then yeah, and then for an example of times where you might not use another ward, but you're still gonna run conflict major is against like demon hunter H pal. So you can do nether ward. You can actually run demon armor straight from your talents, or I like to run fell fissure or cremation and keep the root and just drop fell fissure because you could reflect a hog, but it's not consistent. It's not reliable. I'd rather just run more reliability with either the healing reduction or usually just the bonus damage from cremation. Very strong against like in twos against like H palace and any melee DPS. Very, very strong. Okay, for Azurite. Your standard Azurite is your 3 Rolling Havoc, 2 Flashpoint, 1 Crash and Chaos, and 3 Overwhelming Power. Overwhelming Power is very strong and very potent. Never forget how strong it is, because it is very, very strong if you have 3. I've been lucky enough to get them. So this is your standard setup that you'd want to get for almost every situation. For single target, you're going to want your 1 Chaos Shards, or your 3 Heart of Darkness, 1 Chaos Shards, 1 Chaotic Inferno, 1 Crashing Chaos. But my only thing is about Destro, don't play Destro single target. It's not worth it. Demo, especially with the 5% buff that I got today, or got yesterday, it'll be better. I promise you. If you have a demo set, you have the new trade combos for demo. It's better. I'll make a demo guide later to go over the demo setup and how to play it. It's so much better just to play demo or affliction on single target. Do not play Destro on single target. Just get this set up for your cleave, and then if you want to play Mythic Plus or you're playing PvP, for PvP, you're gonna want your triple flashpoint, 1 crashing chaos, and I say double bursting flare. Obviously, I don't have double bursting flare right now at high eye level. Chaotic Inferno is pretty good, just to give more bolt base damage. I like double bursting flare because I say mastery is super overpowered. I'd regen mastery here. I'd read enchant mastery here. I'd go for this as high as I can get, as long as I'm hitting a decent amount of haste. I'd want a little bit more, but nothing too more. Like max, I'd want 30 here. I mean, obviously, I'd take more if I could still keep a high mastery and high versatility. Crit's pretty bad in PvP, so you don't need a lot of crit in PvP. Um, Mastery versus haste, really good. Just try and as much mastery in verse without losing too much haste. Make sure you're keeping some decent haste, because obviously you are going to get a lot of haste from Flashpoint, but you want to make sure you're still keeping a good base if Flashpoint ever does fall off, and you're not casting 4-second, 3-second bolts that you're never going to get off. You want to make sure you're keeping up a good haste so you can get some faster bolts in there. So, for Mythic Plus, you're going to want to do... I'd run basically this exact same setup, what you run in basically raid, but I would change my chest from Rolling Havoc to Flashpoint. I think 3 Flashpoint is better overall in Mythic Plus. There are some situations where you could say 3 Rolling Havoc would be better. And obviously I mostly play with 3 Rolling Havoc because I don't like changing my chest over, but if you had the option to run, like, do this swap and this was a Mythic Azurite, I would do this every single time. I think it's better. I think it just functions better. So if you have a good PvP chest and your chest, you run Crashing Chaos on both pieces, like I do, then it's a free win. Your PvP chest replaces your free Mythic Plus, and then you just have your raid chest for normal raiding and any other cleave fights or some occasional Mythic Plus gameplay. I've already gone over overall statting. Like the only one I could say for raiding, and just sim yourself in 2-target cleave. For Mythic Plus, sim yourself on 5-target cleave at different intervals of speed just to see what you get. It's going to be about the same. In all these scenarios, I wouldn't make too many changes unless you were playing just one or the other. So, like, obviously for high AoE, Master is really good if you're spamming Rain of Fire. Crit's always pretty good, and Haste is always good. Versatility is obviously always decent, never amazing, but always decent. For PvP, like I said, stack Mastery, followed by a Verse without losing Haste. Like, Haste is not the most important, but it will become the most important if you let it fall too far. Never let it fall too far, or it will become the most important. But haste or mastery is your most important, followed by verse. But haste can be the most important if you let it fall too far. Falling too far, I would say, is falling below 22-23%. You want more than 23% at least. I say at least 25, if not upwards towards 30 is what you really want. Obviously, it'll just come down to what you have, and this will obviously be good going into trinkets. For PvP, I run 1 haste trinket, either the Dragon Scaled, but I have a Vita, and I think Vita is better. I think it's very overpowered, especially for Destro. Like, you get this proc, you get a reverse entry proc, you can really surprise people with 1.5 second cast bolts. If you get this with an reverse entry during Infernal, you can literally just global someone without them really expecting. 3 seconds, 2 bolts, someone's dead, they're not expecting it, you've globaled them. It's really overpowered. Obviously, don't run Fight in PvP, run Bags. Don't run Manifesto, I've already told you Crit is not very good. Run Bags, run Spite, Maledict, or even Claw or Voodoo Doll, I think are pretty good. I think Bags is not... It's pretty good, it's really solid, but you do have your Cloak proc now, so you're going to have that up. That does proc a decent amount of time, and if you're infernaling around it, you can actually get some really big... You can basically have, I'd still run both, because I think this is just more consistent, but there's an argument where if you like Claw more, or you like Voodoo Doll, if you have a really nutty Voodoo Doll or something, you could run one of these instead, and it would help out a lot. So it's very good, especially when you do proc Dark Soul. It's going to give you that crit. They're going to crit really hard, um, and yeah, it's going to be really good. So there is a situation where you can use one of those. For rating, I like to go font Vita. You can use double on use. Manifesto, I think, runs into the problem where it sims really high because you get full up. It sims as full uptime for crit and the max versatility value. I don't. Every time I've played with it, I don't usually hit for full both times. Or if I do, it requires me to move, and I then lose DPS because I'm moving. It's just I don't know. It doesn't feel super efficient. So if I'm gonna use double on use, I usually use bags. Um, Especially because I have a pretty decent one, and I do have a trophy. I might end up making this a 470 bag, and then using this, or yeah, 470 with a socket. It'll be insane. But we'll see. I do love using Vita. I think it's very strong, so I stick with Vita for most of the time. For corruption, it's pretty standard. It's going to be obviously based on what you have, but if you get to choose from anything in the game, obviously for Mythic Plus, any AOE like constant AOE, Twilight Devastation is obviously insane. Twilight Devastation is super OP, especially because your health pool is so usually so high. Right, so mine right now, obviously with no buffs, 562. I get four. I'm over 600k. It's pretty nutty. Um, it really shouldn't be a thing, but it is. So I do a lot of damage with Twilight Devastation. So if you're Warlock playing Destro on any way, try and play Twilight Devastation. For single target, you can obviously run Tentacles or Infinite Stars. Both really good. I think Infinite Stars obviously is pure single target like a Shadhar or Rathion. I think that's where you're going to get most value off of it. Or there are some situations like Carapace, like on Mythic or even Heroic, you're going to be fighting him for a very long time, and where you're doing a lot of your damage to Carapace is at the end. So you can actually get 10 stacks before you hit the end, and they'll never fall off. So you can ramp over time on a long fight like that, and then do it at the very end. It can be very strong, but it's not. It's definitely not mandatory. I just think it's pretty. It can be good on situations. So just think about situations like that. Even though Carapace is an ad fight and Twilight Devastation is probably better, if you're trying to go for Prog, like on Prog right now, I'm doing it for Carapace. I run Infinite Stars. I think boss damage at the end is going to be way more important than anything else. So padding with Twilight Devastation just isn't worth it. So that's what I do. I run one Infinite Stars. If I had a tier 2 Infinite Stars or something that was like Tentacles, I run Tentacles because it's the only thing that can fill out my corruption without going too high. It's pretty good. And then for PvP, I run double tentacle. I have big tentacles. I run tentacles. However, for all situations, I do think stats can be really good. I think for PvP, mastery percent would be insane. If you had a couple of mastery percents, you could become the tankiest and the most. You could have some nutty bolts and just global people with like 2 bolts without having really any infernal stacks or even having infernal at all. You could just Dark Soul and get 2 massive bolts on people and murder them with high enough mastery procs. I think mastery percents are insane for PvP. Versatility follows that, and then obviously haste follows that. Like I said, for PvP, for rating, obviously I think any percent is pretty good. Obviously haste crit, versatility, mastery. I think haste crit are probably your best two, followed by mastery, verse, and maybe. And then obviously if you get too much haste, too much verse crit, obviously mastery comes better, and then verse comes better. But obviously it's just something you can sim. But if you want more consistency, obviously remember that stat corruptions are really insane, and I think they will just gain power as you go on because they have so much power with such low corruption. And for overall corruption, on most situations, if you want to be kind to your guild, run under 40. If you need more damage or you want more damage or you're doing Mythic Plus or PvP, I think you can run on over 40. You could banish, fear, stun, coil. You can do so many things to the thing from beyond, and as Destro, it does give you the added benefit is you can immolate it as soon as it spawns and then get flashpoint from it, and you can get a lot of value from that because flashpoint is so strong, especially in Mythic Plus where you're running 3 flashpoint, and when I normally play, it gives you a lot, especially on anything where it's like pure single target. It gives you the flashpoint, which is really important, and you could even havoc it to get like a couple stacks of rolling havoc, like 2-3 max, which is something. It's nothing crazy, but it does help out a little bit. So yeah, that's corruption, that's gear, that's Azurite. For essences, this is your standard cleave. I like Formless Void. Some people play Breath of the Dying. I think this with anyone running Crucible of Flame becomes super overpowered because you get like 70% uptime with it. But all I can say is like just sim it, like do 2 target cleave, sim it, see what happens. Sim this at a 60% uptime, 70% uptime, higher, lower, to see where this breakpoint is, and then do a test with it on. See what your uptime is for it. See what other people's uptimes are on for it, and you'll see that can be really insane. Obviously, this can be really insane as well. For PvP, your standard obviously um, is your on hit, and so your defense with conflict and strike major, reduce your cooldown of your inferno, massively important, don't forget that. And then you want these are just your two best DPS ones. These will give you the most output you can do, really. There's nothing else that you could really put here that would give you more output. So you're just gonna run this as a standard setup. For single target, like I said, don't ever really run single target, but for Mythic Plus, I actually run this setup right here. Mythic Plus also, I usually actually run Formless Flame on Mythic Plus because most of the time the healers run Crucible of Flames in Mythic Plus, so you can still get really good uptime. But if you don't like that, you can always use Breath of the Dying, or you could use something completely different like Iris or Crucible of Flame if you don't have any corruption necessary, but you probably will, so run Formless, run Breath of the Dying. They're both very strong, and they work. This is what I usually run in Mythic Plus, because I think Lucid makes... I think VOP is too random and can be good or bad, especially with you already using Twilight Devastation. They can kind of cancel each other. One can cancel the other. If you get a lot of Infernal procs, all of a sudden you get like 3 Twilight Devastation procs. Well, the pack's going to die, and then your Infernals are useless. So I don't like running both. I like running one or the other. So I run Twilight Devastation for the chance to help, like give me more damage on, packs where I don't have CDs. And then when I do have CDs, they are insanely overpowered. And this also helps with the single target packs, because there are always going to be single target bosses in Mythic Plus. Any instance, even good instances like Freehold, where the second boss is 2 target cleave, the third boss you have the target dummy to abuse, and the last boss you usually run an obelisk with. Well, the first boss is single target. This will help you with your first bossing damage because you'll burst well over 100k, if not more than that. It's very strong. It's very potent. This is what I run. And this is obviously kind of what you would run in single target. But like I said, don't play Destro single target. It's not very good. Demo is so much better. Affliction is so much better. Just don't play Destro in single target. It's not worth it. So yeah, that is everything there. So we will talk about some basic setups. I'm gonna do a 2 target cleave scenario here. So if you're if we're doing, I want to wait for my font trigger because I recently used it. If you're going to let's say we're going to do an opener. The pull timer is going to hit 8 seconds. I'm going to font. And then I'm going to potion at 4, incinerate, into Kata, into Conflag, into Throw the Inferno. And then I'm going to bolt, and then I'm just going to builds. Reapply the Immolate right before we go into CDs. CD, throw 1, put up your Lucid. Keep bolting right on after this bolt. I'm going to Havoc into Conflag, into bolt, more shards with the Conflag, into bolt. I don't know why because I'm running Focus Chaos. That's why you couldn't see the bolts actually flying. Oops, that was like Focus Chaos. Obviously reading that in this demo, but that is the if you were doing rolling that burst right there is 2 target cleave. Now obviously if it was 2 targets from the beginning, I would actually precast Immolate on that. I'd Kata this one, and then I'd switch to this one, Immolate it. Then I'd first throw the Immolate here, and then I would Inferno into the bolts. However, if we're saying like an ad spawns sometime midway through, and you just want to burst this one and maintain, you can we'll say Raw Den, for example. Raw Den is a perfect one. You're gonna move far, so you want to do Havoc it, and then you want to bolt. Well, Havocing at 12 seconds is your most optimal 2 target cleave damage, because your supremacy will be as high as you can get it, and you'll do the most amount of burst with it. Now there are other situations. So for the other situation, you can Havoc in this situation you want to Havoc 12 seconds before your Infernal. Reason? Havoc's a 30-second cooldown. You Havoc 12 seconds before. So I'll show you here with this Infernal. We'll Havoc 12 seconds before this Infernal, and you'll see what happens. I would actually do like 14, 15. So I'm going to Havoc now, and I'll show you. So this is 13 seconds. This is as close as you can caught it, basically, I would say, without keeping especially if you're gonna run font. Like font's gonna make this really hard. So obviously I'd go a little earlier because I know I have font. So you'd actually want to play a little bit earlier. Then you go into CDs here, and then you have CDs. So I'm gonna big CD here, big CD here. Rebuild some shards before we go into this. Double immolate. If it's two target, like we're saying it is here, and now my Inferno's up. Now obviously it's my Havoc's back up. I mean, so this is what you want to do. And if you saw at the beginning of my Infernal, I had 10 seconds of max rolling Havoc stack, so it gives you more damage on the beginning of your Inferno. Really strong. It's something I picked up from Yips, from Vodka. Really strong, really important that you're playing around Havoc, but also don't hold Havoc. It's really strong. You're playing rolling Havoc around it. If you think about your timings when you're going into Infernals, because that buffs the beginning of your Infernal. So the first ball obviously will just do your normal rolling Havoc damage, but then the next bolts after those will then start doing more and more damage because as you get Supremacy, then your rolling Havoc will fall, and you'll basically go right back into another, and then you'll go into your burst Havoc window. And then there's a thing you can do prior to that, which is Havoc like super early into your Infernal. Like so this would be a great example. Would be the third boss in Freehold, which is the Shark boss with the target dummy. Target dummy, you don't really care how much damage you do to it. You just want to do more damage to the boss. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna Havoc right around, either right at the beginning of Infernal to build shards and just get some more bolts out, or you're gonna Havoc a couple seconds into your Infernal, and then your rolling Havoc will be up for the entire rest of your duration of your Inferno, which will give you the most damage possible. Now, obviously, this is a little bit more rough if you're running the VOP setup, because obviously VOP can extend your Infernal, but it's pure RNG, so just this is scenarios where, if you get an early proc of Inferno, then okay, well I have 10 extra seconds. So you can hold your Dark Soul, you can hold your Havoc for 10 more seconds if you really want to get even more damage. It's RNG, and it obviously really depends on when the Infernos come. But if I threw my Infernal now and then all of a sudden I got another Infernal, I'd probably hold it. So this is you going into your fight. So I'm just gonna ignore the font. You obviously would font before this, but here you go. Okay, I'm gonna Havoc now. We're gonna throw a couple bolts in. Do this, park the Dark Soul, and just keep putting damage in. Obviously, I'm not getting stacks from my Chaos Bolts, but obviously you'd get more stacks. And now you'd have your full rolling Havoc with just pure damage, and you're be doing so much more damage. You'd be doing so much damage, because that'd be up to 6,000 or more intellect, and then you get your cloak pro, and you do so much damage, so much damage, obviously. So that is how you would use rolling Havoc with Inferno. Anything else? Yeah, that's about it. Always think about, when you're running Demonic Circle, where can you put Demonic Circle to save movement? Obviously think about how to use Havoc in the scenario where you're going to Havoc early into the Infernal. Think about it, 30 seconds before Infernal, or 25 seconds before Infernal, 30 seconds before Infernal, I can use one Havoc to have it up. You won't get any value into the Infernal if you use it 30 seconds before, because it's a 10-second buff with a 15-second, or it's a 10-second duration with its 15-second buff. You won't get any benefit out of the Havoc into the Infernal, but you're optimizing your Havoc use and not having to hold Havoc for very long portions of time. Because obviously you're playing around with rolling Havoc, you're playing around Havoc, and it's making your damage so much more greater. So you want to get good utility out of it. So those are the things to think about. Thanks for watching my video. Hope you enjoy. I will make a demo guide and maybe an affliction guide as well. Thank you.